What do you think is the primary driver of human civilization? Is it the desire for sex, love, power, or immortality? Like avoiding the fear of death, constructing illusions that make us forget about our terror over mortality. So, sex, love, power, death.
Is this a Twitter poll?
It's
It's four options.
This is reality. Not everything
That's
maps perfectly into a Twitter poll, but in this case, because there's four options and it is a small number of characters, it does. But I'd like to think I'm more interested. You know what? I think your Twitter polls are fundamentally interesting. There's something about the brevity of a poll, limiting to a set of choices, and having an existential crisis and searching for the answer. That's beautiful.
that combination.
Well, this one's a big one. Like, what do you think is behind it?
Do you believe that there is one primary driver? Like, do you think that it can be understood in the terms of primary drivers?
Yeah, I think, well, maybe it's an engineering perspective, like trying to reverse engineer the brain. I don't think we're equipped or understand enough about the mind to get there.
Yeah, like, what's the primary driver of a tree?
Yeah, well, then it gets to the question of what is life? What is a living organism?
Like, to self-replicate, probably.
That's a very clean simplification, but I think life is more interesting than just self-replication.
Yeah, but it sounds like there's a curiosity in you that you're trying to like poke at, and I don't understand exactly what that curiosity is.
So if I had to dedicate 1,000 years to understand one of these topics, which one would be the most fruitful? I guess is the indirect thing I'm asking.
Fun?
No, well, fun. To me, everything is fun. But
Really?
yeah. I mean, I'm with David Foster Wallace. The key to life is to make sure that everything is unboreable, or to be unboreable, or nothing is boring. Everything is fun. Like everything, I could just literally sit. I honestly, because I don't know where you got that glass, but that glass exists, and I forgot it exists, and it was really fun to me to know that it now is there.
What about like really unpleasant things? Like if you're in like a deep agony.
Yeah, that's fun.
Okay.
That's fun because it's like, I mean, yeah, heartbreak is like knowing that I'm capable of that. It like from, you know, we're all living in the gutter, but some of us are looking up at the stars. So when you're in that gutter, for some reason the stars look brighter, right? Like, so like whenever you're going through a difficult time, or whenever you see maybe other people being shitty to each other, it makes you like really appreciate when they're not. The contrast makes life kind of amazing. I'm reading a bunch of books. One of them is Brave New World, where they remove, where they remove the ups and downs of life, partially through drugs, but over sexualization and all that kind of stuff. And I feel like you need that you need the ups and downs of life. The dark, you need the dark to have happiness, to have like a deeply intense feeling of affection towards another thing or a human being. Yeah. Yeah. So everything's fun. But fun is also a weird word to define, because fun, I think for a lot of people, that's why I talk about love a lot. I think love is a better word than fun, because fun is like lighthearted. Love is more intense. Like, I love that glass and the water that's in it, because it's freaking awesome. Like, somebody made that glass, right? Like and like not have many mistakes. And like and the way it bends light in interesting ways, and the way water bends light in interesting ways. Like, I can see part of your arm through that water. That's freaking amazing. Everything is amazing. I'm with the Lego movie. Anyway, if like from a scientific perspective, if I were to investigate sex, I don't know why I put love in there. Let's just narrow down the Twitter poll. Let's focus on the basics here. Sex, power, or death, immortality. If I were to try to, like from a neuroscience, neurobiology perspective, or reverse engineer through building AI systems that focus on these kinds of dynamics, exploring the game theoretic aspects of it, exploring the sort of cognitive modeling aspects of it, which one would get me to a deeper understanding of the human condition? That's the question. Sex. Okay. Nietzsche is the will to power. Freud and the bunch is all about sex. And then death. Live Burley a brilliant previous guest on this podcast, she just released a video where on her bedside was the book Denial of Death by Ernest Becker, which of course she would have on her bedside. But that his whole work is that everything is motivated by our trying to escape the cold, harsh reality that we're going to die and we're terrified of it. One of the gifts and burdens for human beings is that we are cognizant of our own death, and that terrifies us. That's the theory. And because of that, we do everything we can. We build empires to escape the fact that we're mortal.
Wouldn't this change quite a bit for religious people then, who don't believe that they're going to die?
Well, they created religion. The idea there to create myths, religions. You can create religions of all kinds.
Yeah. But if this is like one of the defining things that defines civilization, then we should expect to see like massive differences between people who believe we're going to die and people who don't.
Good, I love it. You think it like a scientifically here, but and they have actually answers. Like there's a whole terror management theory where they do write psychology type papers, and they do actual experiments. I can mention how their methodology is interesting. They prime with a discussion of death. Like they take one certain set of people, they have a conversation with them, and another set of people, they mention death to them before the conversation and see how that affects their the nature of the conversation. It's really interesting because death fundamentally alters the nature of the conversation. Just even priming reminding you that you're going to die briefly changes a lot of things.
These kinds of priming papers usually not replicated. I just have I feel like I've heard a bunch of priming ones that.
I think you have PTSD over psychology papers and not replicated.
I just did one. I just did a priming experiment on my own and found it didn't have any effect. But again,
can't you just give me a careless statement summarizing an entire scientific discipline of terror management theory? I don't know. People should I haven't rigorously looked at how good of it is psychologically. I think it is interesting philosophically the way Freud talked about the subconscious mind. Philosophically, it's an interesting discussion. Then you have to get rigorous with it for sure. But the idea is that it's not that religious people get rid of the terror of death. This is just one of the popular ways they create an illusion on top of it. That's that idea, like a myth that makes it easier for them to forget, to escape that terror. But everybody else does different methods. Like you fill your days with capitalism is a whole religion of itself. Like the rat race for getting more and more material possessions and so on.
I mean, couldn't you argue it in the opposite direction? Like, let's assume that we're Christians here and we're like, the atheists, everybody has terror of hell. And the atheists invent this mythology where, actually evolution is true in order to escape their terror of hell. Mm-hmm. So that doesn't feel like a persuasive argument to me. But I used to be very, very Christian and I did not have a terror of death. And then I lost my faith and then I had a deep terror of death set in for a few years. And it felt very different to me.
So for denial of death, I don't know if he says that it's actually possible without really a lot of work to get to the actual terror. I think his claim is that in early childhood development, that's when the terror is real. And then we aggressively construct systems around it of social interaction to sort of construct illusions on top of it. I'm doing a half-assed description of this philosophy, but there is it is interesting to simplify the human mind into underlying mechanisms that drive it.
Yeah, I was going to say, your thinking seems kind of poetic. Like the way that you're sort of handling these concepts feel more aesthetically driven.
I think this theme is going to continue throughout this conversation as we talk about relationships and sex. Yes, for sure. I think so. And I think your thinking seems to be very driven by how can I construct an experiment to test this hypothesis.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, but there's some things, especially that have to do with the human mind, that are really messy, really difficult to understand. There's so many uncertainties and mysteries around that we don't yet have the tools to collect the data. Like one of your favorite tools is the survey, is asking people questions and then figuring out different ways to indirectly get at the truth, because there's flaws to the survey. You kind of learn about those flaws and you get better and better at asking the right questions and so on. But that's not that's indirect access to the human mind.
But do you think like poetic narratives are? I'm not like saying poetic narratives are bad. Like I think it's like a cool way of like handling concepts, but I'm not sure that they are more rigorous.
No, no, no,
Okay.
no. But like they might be the more correct. Like philosophy might be the right way to discuss things that we're really far from understanding.
Yeah, I mean they might be more useful shorthand.
Yeah.
Like morality, like I don't think morality makes any sense, but it's really useful shorthand to use when handling concepts in a lot of the time.
Right, like ethics and morality. You could construct studies that ask different questions. Like just having worked with autonomous vehicles a lot, the trolley problem gets
Mhm.
brought up. And I don't know, you can construct all kinds of interesting surveys about the trolley problem, but does that really get at some deep moral calculus that humans do? It's sexy because people like write clickbait articles about it, but does it really get to like what you value more? Five grandmas or like three children? Or whatever. Like they construct these arguments of like, if you could steer a train, if you could steer an autonomous car, which do you choose? Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it's possible with some of those to construct it. Like sometimes the fuzzy area, there's some topics that are fuzzy and will forever be fuzzy, given our limited cognitive capabilities.
I don't know. There's a way of looking at things where it's like, for example, the childhood fetish thing that I was
Yeah.
talking about. Like, where do your fetishes come from? Like, you can develop a narrative where it's like, you know, I think like this kind of thing is, you know, when you're surrounded by feet when you're a child, this causes foot fetishes. And this is like kind of a cool narrative. And I think a lot of people's ideas about philosophy follow the same sort of thing. Like, what is the narrative that is cool? And I think this is useful for meaning making. Like, I'm very pro meaning making. Like when you're talking about everything is fun because you know the contrast or whatever. I very much ascribe to that. I really enjoy that philosophy. I also find everything to be very delightful. And this isn't like a question of truth, right? We're not like where is the true delight that we're objectively measuring. Like this is a frame, a poetic frame that you're using to like sort of change the way the light hits the world around you,
Mhm.
and that's super useful because it like makes you happier or something.
Yeah, but also gets to the truth or something.
Yeah, I guess what is truth?
Yet another question. What is truth? You've actually, to jump back, you believe that free will is an illusion.
Mm.
So why does it feel like I'm free to make any decision I want?
It's a cool illusion. I think that's probably like where our sense of identity
It's a
comes
fun
from.
illusion. Oh,
Like when you really meditate on your sense of identity, for at least for me, it seems like it comes down to the sense of choice. Like, oh, I am doing the thinking. Like, what does it mean to do with thinking? It's like, something in me has exerted agency over having this thought or not having this thought. Like the sense of self really comes down to choice. And so when I say that like free will is an illusion, I also mean there's something like the self is an illusion, identity is a trick of the light.
but it's a really fun one.
Yeah,
You think a lot about your identity.
I have occasionally.
Yeah. Like you really struggle with it. You're proud of it. I do too. It's not, we'll have different journeys, but
Mhm.
so
I really take a lot of delight in it. I used to be very into like deconstructing it. Like maybe you know I did a bunch of like way too much LSD for a while, and at that point, very no ego. And now I'm like very ego,
mhm.
and I really enjoy having a lot of ego.
I actually happen to know like everything about you.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow,
Like more than you do. It's interesting.
that's fascinating. Wait, can you solve my problems?
Yes, all of them. I did thorough research. Okay. What is consciousness then? I actually wrote that as a question. What is consciousness? To remind myself. So like how does that tie in together with free will and identity and all of that?
That's me. What is consciousness is like one of the biggest questions ever. I think I do think that people often get confused when talking about consciousness because I think people are referring to two separate concepts and often like combining them into one thing. Like we asked the question, you know, is AI going to be conscious? I think this is kind of the wrong question. Like, uh, like we can identify signs of consciousness, like they seem to refer to themselves, but this is not necessarily proof of consciousness in the same way that like dream characters acting exactly the way normal people do in your dream is not evidence that they themselves are conscious. So like signs of consciousness are not proof of consciousness, but there is something that we definitely know, which is like I currently am conscious. I can tell because right, like I'm like just directly observing my experience.
Yeah.
And so like there's one kind of consciousness which is I am directly observing my experience, and that you cannot replicate it. Like I cannot observe two experiences. It is necessarily singular, and it is necessarily certain. Like you can make all the arguments you want. Like I'm still directly observing. It's not a thing that's subject to reason. Whereas our other thing is conscious. This is something that's replicable. You can apply it to multiple people. It's something that's not certain, like almost definitionally not certain. Like we don't actually know if there is, an internal experience. So my argument is that like when people are talking about other things having experience, they're using a different concept than the thing that they're actually looking at when they look at their own experience. I think they're two different things.
Definitionally not possible. No, if you understand the mechanism of consciousness, you'll be able to measure it probably, right?
Yeah, but what are you measuring? Like, I think this is like a subtle difference. Like when you're asking the question, is this other thing conscious?
Yeah. The easy thing to measure is like a survey. Does this thing appear conscious?
Yeah.
And then the hard thing is you understand the actual mechanism of how consciousness arises in the physics of the
you
human
could do that in
brain.
a dream, presumably. Like if you had a very good dream or a very good simulation.
Yeah.
But we could then have somebody in a simulation or a dream where they go through and they fully understand, they do all the tests and the tests come back exactly the way you would expect them to. Yeah. But from the outside, we're like, well, this is misleading. They're not actually conscious. Like your dream characters aren't conscious, right? Probably.
I don't know. Are you asking? Are you telling?
I'm like appealing to an intuition.
But it sounds like you're driving towards the narrative. You did a poll about men and women and dreams.
Yeah.
There was some kind of difference. I couldn't tell what the difference was, except that more men than women.
Quite a lot more women dream vividly than men.
Oh.
Which I actually found in my chaos survey. So I did a survey, maybe I just had
I know everything. Do you remember?
You know, yes, I'm sorry. So as you clearly know.
I'll try not to talk down to you through this conversation because I not only know everything, I know how your future looks like.
Really?
And how everything ends, yeah.
So you could probably win all the prediction markets on my life.
Yeah.
Cool.
So we should also mention that you have like prediction markets. You have like votes that what's the site called again? Manifold. And one of them was, will I be on the Lex Friedman podcast?
Yeah.
And I voted. I invested everything I owned into the yes. Is there such thing as insider trading on there? Because that goes against the terms of the...
No, I think insider trading is part of the information. So it's supposed to be.
And then I realized it's actually public information that I voted. Because like, I think my face shows up there. It's like, damn it. It's going to influence significantly. You could make the fake account. Or I could be lying, right?
Yeah, that's true.
And then dump the stock or whatever.
I tried to manipulate. Somebody made a market like, is Aella going to post a poll spelled POLE on her Twitter, like a photo? And I was like, I'm going to manipulate this market. So I like fucked around with it and I voted no. And then I accidentally posted a photo of a poll without thinking.
It's like that's like self-sabotage.
I accidentally fucked up my own market.
That's like the reverse of insider trading.
Yeah.
What were we talking about? Oh, the women and the men and the difference, the vivid dreams and the markets. I forget what the market. Oh, because I can perfectly predict your future. Yeah. But then it's not fun. I like the romance of unpredictability, and so I like to, even though I know everything, I like to forget everything.
Yeah. Very, very Buddhist of you.
Yeah, the river. No man in the river once. Whatever the footsteps, however that goes.
That's one of my favorite questions. Is like if you could press a button and then have all of your wants fulfilled, anything that you want. So it's like such a rapid degree that you don't really experience the want. Like as the want arises, it then is like completed as immediately, so that you are completely without want. Like would you press that button?
100% not. No.
Yeah, I didn't think you would.
No, because immediately everything stops being fun. It's only fun the first time.
But if you want it to be fun.
But like, what would be my source of fun? I feel like I would like on day 4 just to get off. I would need to like do like nuclear war because it'll escalate quickly. I feel like if everything is possible, I assume you mean like something that like is not just normal human things.
Yeah,
but
magical
like
world.
Magical world. Then you start escalating really quickly. Like I wonder. I'll probably do like I want everybody to just fly into the air and hover in the air.
Mm-hmm. That'd be cool.
Everybody. And then you're like, oh, life is meaningless. Like, why does, like, you go, I feel like you get, actually, that'd be a really interesting experiment. Like, what are the limits? Like, are we all capable of becoming psychopaths, essentially? Like, I like to believe not. There's a very hard limits on that, like in our own mind, like of basic compassion. because I love being compassionate towards other human beings. And
Mm.
it's one of the things I think about. If you give me power, like a lot of power, like absolute power, and I think the power you mentioned is the scariest kind of power, because it's like it's not even power in this normal world. It's like magical power
Mm.
where you lose. It's like dream world power where you like video game power. You don't even think of it as reality. You could just mess with the world. And I feel like that's terrifying.
Yeah, you'll
And
basically be God.
God, yeah. But without like, I feel like the idea of God wants to like kind of keep things like functioning properly.
But then you would probably would if you wanted to keep them functioning
Yeah.
properly, then it
Yeah.
would rapidly like you would never experience a time where you're like, oh no, that was a mistake. Because as soon you like before you even experience that, the world would shift to match it.
Oh, interesting. No, I think I would actually, I take it back. I think I would regret the first time I hurt somebody. See, in my visualization, it was like a video game where everybody's like NPC, really dumb.
Mm.
No, I think the first time I witness pain from anybody, that's when I would stop, and I would probably run into that very quickly.
Mm.
Like even just the hovering, make a person hover, and they're going to be probably really upset with the hovering, right? And so I'm going to be like, no, don't do that anymore. And then I'll probably go to honestly, I'll just return back to my normal life. And
Yeah, that's kind of what I feel like. Like if I had the power to do anything, I think I would probably want to have a life very similar to where I am now.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's like with Uber, like it'd be probably more convenient to do certain things. But even then, like the struggle, like I got a flat tire, so I have to fix that. I kind of the flat tire makes everything more beautiful. It's like cool. I could do like a normal manual thing. But also it makes you like appreciate your car, appreciate transportation, appreciate the convenience of transportation, all of it.
I know some people who would like call this a bunch of copium. Like you're just sort of making do with what you have. Like
Yeah,
we wouldn't go back to Amish times or like pre-technology because to like in order to make ourselves
sure.
appreciate things more. And so this seems like a hindsight reasoning, uh, which like I can appreciate that argument, but I don't know. I'm like I kind
Anyone
of
who uses, sorry to interrupt, the word copium in their argumentation,
mm,
I think is sus,
is
as the kids say.
sus.
Yeah.
Is
It's-
sus my entire argument is now.
no, I'm just kidding. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Sorry, I interrupted rudely the flow of thought. But so you don't think so? In part, you disagree with that kind of argument.
um Yeah, because I think people have this idea that if you like come to accept or like find meaning in what you have now, this is sort of at odds with trying to improve it. And
Right.
I don't find this to be the case. I find like the attempt to improve it to also be part of it.
Yes.
Like I enjoy the fact that there's something like problematic going on because now I get the experience of like striving to make it go away. And like that in itself is where the meaning lies. It's not just that things are bad, it's that there's things are bad and we're trying to stop it. And also
Hmm.
uh,
Exactly.
there's
If you combine that with a sense of optimism that the future can be better, yeah, that
Mhm.
feeds into this productive effort of making things better. And it somehow makes the vision of the things that are better more intense, having experienced shitty things.
Yeah.
So we talked about free will and consciousness and what drives human civilization. Question left unanswered. Um, it's a homework problem for the reader. Okay. Let's
If I get like a scoreboard at the end, the amount of questions
the
completed
answer
successfully versus not.
like polls.